All right. So, I'd love you, as we go along, if you want to kind of just listen in, that's totally fine. That's awesome. And if at any point you've got something you want to contribute, like an opinion, an experience, or a question, just please just unmute yourself and talk away, or just type it into the chat, either one. So the basic premise is that for things that are undifferentiated, essentially what we call them is a commodity. There's the only thing that separates them is basically price, right? So if you're, if you're the Chinese government and you're buying iron ore, right? Well, it's going to be very hard for me to convince you that my particular brand of iron ore is better than someone else's brand of iron ore. It's just like it's just a ship full of dirt, right? So it's going to be hard for me to sell you that mine's premium or something like that. And that's probably the same for a lot of things that we all, use and pay for on a regular basis. So things like, at a kind of a basic level, stuff maybe you buy from, like for your car, like petrol. I imagine most of you don't have a real strong preference when it comes to petrol brands. Okay, you probably see one brand of petrol as pretty much interchangeable with another brand. And if there was a service station 2 blocks up that was selling petrol 10% cheaper, that would be enough to sway you to go to that different service station. Whereas there are probably other things where you see them as much less commodified. So for instance, there might be let me tell you a little story. So I very occasionally go and buy some ice cream from the supermarket. And, sometimes it's the weekend and you think, could really go some ice cream. I ask my wife, do you feel like some ice cream? She's like, yeah, let's have some ice cream. So we go and buy some ice cream. And so we've got 3 or 4 supermarkets within a 10-minute drive of home. And so which one do we go to? Well, they've all basically got the same brand of ice cream, right? So which one do I go to? It comes down to, well, where's the parking easier, or, which one's cheaper? And there's just this one that happens to have the particular brand of ice cream that we like in the size of tub that we like, right, reliably. And so my default is I head towards that supermarket. But if any of the other supermarkets, happen to start stocking that brand, or if they stopped stocking that brand, like it would be a 2-second decision for me to choose the other supermarket, right? I have no brand loyalty to that supermarket whatsoever. Whereas there is a cafe just down the road here that is an Argentinian breakfast cafe. And it's like in Australia, that's a real kind of unusual, exotic sort of a thing. And it's cooked by what seems to me to be a totally authentic sort of Argentinian, matriarch who's, waddles out of the kitchen every now and then and sort of yells at you in whatever language they speak in Argentina. Is it Portuguese or whatever? But and the food is unbelievable. Like I've never had food like that. I don't mean like it's good. I mean, it's different. It's great, but it's like they've got stuff on the menu there that I've never had at a cafe before. You go into most cafes, it's the same menu. It's focaccias and it's, whatever you get, eggs and whatever. But at this place, it's totally different. And so it would take a lot for me to choose a different cafe, right? Because I don't see anything as interchangeable, right? There's not something that is the same but 10% cheaper. It's like there's nothing the same. And so I think that's, the supermarket in that example is commodified, right? They're just like generic and I don't see have any loyalty to them. And like how long would I have to, agonize about going to a different supermarket? 0. It would cost, be exactly 0. But, you know, if my wife said, oh, let's go out to breakfast somewhere different today, you know, we'd have kind of an argument about that, you know, because I'd be like, no, I really want to go to my favorite cafe. So, you know, I guess what can we do as Pilates instructors or business owners to separate ourselves out so that our clients don't see us as generic and commodified? It's like, oh, well, I'll go to Neha's class tonight, but oh no, you know, Belinda's teaching down the road and she's $1 cheaper, so I'll go to her. You know, and so the people don't see any difference between us, right? And so that's the name of the game, right? And so if you know, and back to the example that I gave, like, okay, so if my favorite Argentinian cafe put their coffee prices up by 50%, that wouldn't deter me, right? I'd be like, oh, the bill seems a bit more today. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, we put our prices up. I'd be like, oh, cool. You know, but if I went to the ice cream place and their prices were 50%, I'd be like, oh, I wonder what the other supermarkets are selling it for. And so I'm much more price sensitive in that realm where I feel it's commodified, right? And you're the same, right? There are some brands and things that you buy and pay for where you buy it because it so exactly fills a need that nothing else fills for you, that if the price was more or if it was inconvenient, right? If that cafe moved, you know, to the next suburb across and I now had to drive across 3 major railways and, you know, take half an hour, I would probably still go there, right? Even no matter how inconvenient it was. Whereas if the supermarket moved across town, there's no way I would go to that supermarket. Okay, so it's like how much that brand loyalty really shows how much it's either commodified or differentiated. Okay, and so I guess, you know, in Pilates, you know, how do we differentiate ourselves so that someone, you know, if I'm going to Nia's class, right, and my friend says, oh, why don't you come to Belinda's class today? They're all the same. And I'm like, oh, no way. No one could be the same as Nia. You know, like that's just what I get at her class is unique, right? It's not apples for apples, right? And it's not saying the other class is not good. It's saying it's just not comparable. It's not the same thing, right? And so that's the ultimate sort of goal of differentiation, where somebody doesn't see what you offer as just a swap-in substitutable commodity for the same thing that they're getting up the road. And if there is swap-in, then they obviously it's convenience and price are the things that they're shopping on, right? So, you know, how do we create that? Well, you know, I think that the mistake that a lot of us make, and I definitely made this mistake at the start, was just saying, you know, I care and quality, right? It's like, oh, we really care about our clients. It's like, well, hands up if you're on this call and you really care about your clients. I'm hoping everyone's putting their hand up right now, right? It's like, okay, so that doesn't make you different. I'm sorry, right? That's the price of admission, right? Who wants to go to a Pilates instructor who doesn't give a shit about you? It's like no one, right? So that doesn't differentiate you. Now it's important, right? But it's not sufficient to differentiate you. And the same, like, okay, well, who tries to teach the best quality classes you can with the best, you know, choosing the best programming, the best music, the best, you know, sequence and flow and making it interesting? Like, we all do that, right? Now, you might be slightly better at one part of that than someone else is, and they might be slightly better at one part of it than you are, but we're all pretty good at all of those things, I think, right? So, you know, we can't differentiate on that either. Now, that's really necessary, right? If you can't program a good class and you can't create a flow and you can't, you know, like, well, you're not going to be successful. So you have to be able to do that. But just because you can do that doesn't set you apart, right? That's the price of admission into the game. So how can we differentiate ourselves? So what are your thoughts? Surely you've had some thoughts on this. But you're not allowed to say quality or customer service.
I think community is a big aspect, Raph, for people.
Tell me more about that.
Just, you know, that they feel like it's more like a family than just a, you know, come in cold, leave cold. They feel welcome straight away.
Right.
They get to know people, similar people come. It's not different people all the time that are in class with them, things like that.
So it's not necessarily about you being friendly, although that's, you know, required. It's about the connections people make with other clients and them feeling that this is my tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're a huge component, but that community feel just adds the spice, if you like.
Right. So who was it that said about age? Oh, Laura. Age being a negative, right? Well, just before you said that, Jennifer actually said it's a positive, right? And so it depends what the context is, right? Now, if you walk into the local, now I'm just going to say KX because this is just the brand that is top of mind for me. I'm not thinking of anyone in particular, and I don't want to malign KX. I think KX is awesome. But if you walk into the local KX studio, right, and say, typically you'll have an instructor there in their 20s, okay, and a lot of the clients will be in that sort of 20s to 30s age group, okay, and you're in your 50s, well, you're kind of like the odd one out in that situation, right? So maybe age would be a negative in that situation because it's like, well, you don't fit the tribe, right? But if you're a 25-year-old, bright young thing, okay, teaching at KX, and then you walk into, at the local studio around where I live, where the demographic is like, people in their 50s and 60s, right? And it's boutique and it's like everyone's, really, it's an older, more conservative kind of situation. Like you have zero credibility in that situation because people think, oh, what do you know? You're only 25, right? I don't want to be taught by a 25-year-old. I want to be taught by somebody who's, been there, done that, and knows what they're doing. Now, that's a stereotype, and that might not be true of a 25-year-old. They might be really sensitive and know, really skilled and know all of that stuff. But it's a stereotype that a lot of people have. And so, I think, do I think age can be a negative when applying for jobs? Yeah, but it can also be a positive in equal measure. Depends where you apply for the job, right? So, and I think that's the same with differentiating yourself, right? So if we go back to the example of KX, they, well, what's K, when I say KX Pilates, those of you who are in Australia, what does that bring to mind? What's their branding? What's different about them?
Hard and fast, get in, get out.
Yeah, it's intensity, right? They've gone for that word intensity, right? And so if that's your thing, well, that's great. It doesn't say it's better or worse. It just says that's what they're about. So, and, I used to, slight aside, I used to be on the Pilates Alliance of Australia committee, and there was a lot of, back in the day when I was on that committee, there was a lot of fear and negativity about KX brand because it was too dangerous, too fast, too hard, wasn't quite real Pilates and all of this stuff. So, but at the same time, people were flocking to pay money to KX to do their classes, right? So by differentiating themselves and making them highly attractive to one demographic, they repelled a different demographic, right? And that's what happens when you differentiate yourself, right? Is you become magnetic to certain people, but you repel other people, right? So you start to polarize people. Whereas when you're commodified, no one gets offended by what you do because no one even notices what you do. They see you as the same as everybody else, right? And so, maybe a good, I think it's a really good rule of thumb to think like, okay, well, we're not trying to please everyone here, right? We're actually, if you actually are turning some people off, that's probably a good sign that you're attracting other people, right? So if I go to your classes, Bridget, and I feel welcomed into that community, well, that community is not going to just be like neutral in its culture, right? There's some culture within that community, and there might be sort of generic things about community like everyone's friendly or, whatever, but there's going to be certain things certain beliefs and, cultural practices and assumptions that knit that community together, and I don't know what they are in your case, but, the community you get at a gym, for example, would be slightly different to the community you would get at a, Zumba class or or a Pilates class, in a small studio. So, so it's the vibe, and one, what attracts one person will repel a different person. And any other dimensions that you think we could differentiate on?
I think if the instructor is genuinely almost in touch with her clients rather than just rolling cues off her tongue and walking up and down, I think that for me that's a big plus. I would avoid the instructor and avoid her classes, no matter how popular she was, if she wasn't actually looking at the clients and engaging and just asking them, are they all right, especially when it comes to beginners and pregnancy and things like that. And I think there's a lot of instructors out there like that. They just go in, get the class over and done with and go out. They're the instructors I would avoid.
Right. And I would say that's probably a cultural difference that, I would see. And, if I went to more of a fitness style Pilates class, perhaps the instructor there would see themselves more as kind of a fitness leader, not someone to kind of, correct everybody's technique or, that kind of thing. I don't know, I'm just generalizing, but, that might be a cultural difference between, different studio settings. And, that would be a situation where, so if you wanted to, differentiate yourself as, going for a job, for example, well, I would, get clear on, okay, well, that's something you believe in, obviously. So then looking for studios that believe in that same thing. And then when you apply for the job, say, hey, I see you're a studio who believes in personal attention and care and actually paying attention to your client's exercise technique and giving them feedback and all of that. And that's what I'm into as well, right? And I'm not just a wham bam, thank you, ma'am, next please. So that's why I'm attracted to working for you. And so that, is, a great start at differentiating yourself. Hannah says, hi Raph, I'm 28 years old and I'm loving my job teaching yoga and Pilates classes and one-to-ones, etc. However, my friends and family are concerned that I should study something else as a backup in case my body gives in. I would like to think that if I'm determined and stay healthy and active, I can have a long career teaching movement, but at the same time, I don't see many 60-year-old teachers out there. What is your view on this? Does age affect movement ability or is it more lifestyle factors? Well, Hannah, I think as you age, you don't your maximum capacities decrease. We don't see any 60-year-olds winning the high jump at the Olympics, for example. So at 60 years old, your maximum potential is lower than at 20 years old. And I say that as a 50-year-old. I'm much closer to 60 than 20. But at 60 years old, people are still running marathons, doing triathlons, doing backbends in yoga and the splits and all kinds of stuff. And there's no reason at 60 or 70 or 80 that you can't teach Pilates. If I'm a 60 or 70-year-old client, I probably don't want a 20-year-old instructor. I probably want someone closer to my own age. So I don't see that as a problem at all. Laura says, I'm nearly 60 and still teaching. So you go, girl. Jennifer says, I'm in my 60s and teaching and moving better now than when I was in my 40s and 50s. Rhiannon, hi Rhiannon, nice to have you on the call, says, I'm 67-year-old Pilates instructor, loving my new career. So, all right, it seems like we've busted that myth. Apparently Pilates instructors do get better with age. It's good news for me. So, what I'd like to share what we have done at Breathe to differentiate ourselves, and it's a little exercise that you can go through. And the basic premise is that, if we all agree that, that we can't differentiate on quality or customer service because those are kind of everybody's doing it, and if you're not doing it, you don't get in the game. So we have to do those things, but they're not going to differentiate us. Right? So how are we going to differentiate? Well, I think it's really important to differentiate in a way, or really by definition, when you differentiate, it means differentiating in a way that is meaningful to your customers, right? If you say, okay, well, I'm going to be different. I'm the only Pilates instructor where the studio is painted fluorescent pink, right? Well, maybe your customers don't care about that, right? So it's like, yeah, you might be the only instructor with fluorescent pink studio, but no one gives a shit. So how can you be different in a way that your clients actually find meaningful and compelling, right? What's important to them that you can be different on? Now, that's not going to be the same for each of us, right? Because we've got different clienteles. We live in different areas. We've got different interests. If you're working with, young mums or retired people or, 20-somethings or whatever, those criteria are going to be different, what people find meaningful and important. And so the best way to find out what people find important is, guess what? Ask them. And the best thing to do is not just ask your clients, right? Because you've got a bunch of people who are currently your clients, right? Or clients at a studio where you work. Okay. And, so they're the ones that come along. But you've also got people that inquired with you at some point, but then never became a client. Or maybe they come and did one trial class and they never came back. Okay. Or maybe they were a client for a while, but then they sort of dropped out. Okay. And then you've got, at the other end, you've got your like raving fans. You've got clients who drag their husbands and boyfriends down, and every week they show up with a different friend that they're dragging down to do Pilates, and people ring you up and DM you on social media saying, oh, so-and-so told me to get in touch with you. Like these are just your raving fans. Okay. And they're the ones that always love your social media posts and always comment and all of that stuff. Okay. So you've got the whole spectrum of people, from people who inquired but never sort of became a fully fledged client, all the way through to people who are sort of raving fans. And the best thing is to interview a few of each of those and find out what the differences are, right? So what's the difference? So there are a lot of people who want to do Pilates out there in the world, right? And so if I want to do Pilates with you, well, what's different between somebody who becomes a raving fan and somebody who like did a couple of classes and was like, can take it or leave it. Okay. And it's not necessarily to do with you. It might be to do with what's going on for them. Right. But there will be some distinguishing characteristics of those people who are your raving fans that are different to the people that just came a couple of times and then didn't come back, or the people that, are sporadic. They're sort of semi-regular, but they're not just really like clockwork, right? There's going to be some differences in their, behavior, beliefs, attitudes, goals, obstacles, desired outcome, whatever it might be. There are going to be some things, and you will notice those things. If you speak to enough of those people, you'll start to be able to predict what they're going to say even before they say it. So what I recommend and what we do, okay, is we just talk to customers. And I think I've talked to a few of you actually and done this process with some of you on the call. And it's really, really simple, and it's fun and it's easy, and you'll learn so much. So basically, I've got a little process that I'll share with you in a sec, where basically you just, right, for a start, you just make a list of your best customers, right? Who are the people that you're like, oh, these are our like raving fans, and they basically, if they could come 15 times a week, they would, and just like text those people and say, hey, I'd really like to, have a chat with you and understand your journey in Pilates, okay? Because you're such a great customer, and, I'd like to understand what sort of makes you tick, so I can get more great customers like you. Would you be open to a half-hour phone call? And I think what you'll find is with those great customers, you'll get about a 99% response rate because they love you so much already. They'll go, oh, you want to talk to me? They'll be like, oh, I'm so thrilled. Bridget called me up and wanted to talk to me. That'd be awesome. I'd like nothing more than to spend half an hour talking with Bridget about Pilates, because that's like my favorite thing in the whole world is doing Pilates with Bridget. So what could be more awesome? So then you make a time to talk, and then basically you just you go through this little process, which I will share with you now. And I'm going to share this blank form with you. So you guys can see my Word document there. All right, so this is just a template, right? So you can make it your own. But basically, it's really, really simple. It's not super easy because it's actually quite hard until you practice it a bit to not interrupt people. But the basic gist of it is you ask an open-ended question and then you just don't say anything and you let them talk, right? And remember, these are your favorite clients who love coming to Pilates with you. So if you just ask them a basic question, they're going to go for hours, right, until you interrupt them. So it's really, just ask a question. And as we normally converse with people, like if you have a coffee with your friend or whatever, okay, typically our instinct is we agree. Someone says something like, oh yeah, that happened to me too. Or like, oh, I know what you mean because blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, that's awesome that you did that. Or, oh, that must be really tough. Or, my kids have the same problem. So, this is kind of a natural conversational, thing that we do. But actually in this situation, that's going to not be your best approach. The best thing is just ask a question and let them talk. So an open-ended question is just a question which they can't answer yes, no, or maybe, right? So it's something like, tell me what you love about Pilates, right? There's not a yes, no answer to that question. Whereas do you love Pilates is a yes, no question. So that's a closed question. So we want to ask open-ended questions because that then lets them talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about. So basically this just goes through some suggested questions. So here's a little preamble when you call them up. Okay, you say, hey, thanks for speaking with me. I appreciate it. And, so depending on who you're talking to, so if you're talking to someone who is, one of your best clients, you say, hey, Bridget, you've been a regular client for a while now. And to be honest, you're one of our best clients. I love the way you always comment on our social media posts. I love the way you're always early for class. I love the way you're cheerful. I love the way you bring me a cafe latte on Saturday mornings before class, and I love the way you drag all of your friends down, at least once a week. And, I'd actually like to get more clients just like you. I'd like my class to be filled up with Bridgets. Okay. So actually, I'm hoping that you can share your story with me and I can come to understand what's important to you and what's brought you to, to be the, in the place that you're at with your Pilates journey, so that I can, reach out to more people who are in the same situation. And, in my experience, and I know I've had that exact conversation with a few of you on the call, people are thrilled to be able to share their story with you and, to give you their views on things. So just start with a couple of, and so there are a couple of different scenarios here. So for instance, if you're talking to someone who's not a regular client, you would, maybe use a slightly different preamble, right? You inquired with us a little while ago, which tells me that you're considering starting Pilates with us, but you haven't yet started. So, I'd really like to understand about your journey and where you're at, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to understand, why you're attracted to Pilates and what's, holding you back from starting. Or, you were a client for a while, but we haven't seen you lately and I want to understand your journey and the factors that contributed to you stopping Pilates with us. I want to understand your story. And with your permission, you need to let them know this, I'm going to record the call. Okay. So just so I can listen back to it again, I'm not going to publish it anywhere. It's not for marketing or anything. It's just, I might share it with, my team so that we can understand your journey, but it'll never be published anywhere. So is that cool? And then you just start with some basic details. And so it's like your name, and how do I spell that? Because it's really easy to misspell people's names over the phone, I've discovered. What's your phone number? Where are you located? So there's just really easy, basic questions that, it's easy for people to answer. They're kind of warming up question. And then, what work do you do? Do you work full-time or part-time? Do you work from home? And then now they're kind of warmed up, okay, and you've got some basic factual information about them. That's when you get into the sort of more important questions, which, you don't have to ask them all the questions. You just choose one, or so from each box. That basically takes them through the journey of like, okay, when did you first start thinking about doing Pilates? Okay, can you remember, Bridget, you've been coming to class for a couple of years now, but can you remember back to a time before you started Pilates? Like, do you remember when you had your first thought about trying Pilates? And like often, my experience of doing this with people is like, they're like, yes, I do remember. I remember my friend dragged me down, or I remember I was scrolling through Facebook, or I remember, whatever it was, I walked past that studio that had just opened, and they remember the precise moment, right? It was a Wednesday. It was 6 p.m. Like people have got quite specific memories often about these things. And then just, what triggered that? And you can ask a great follow-up question, which is, tell me more about that, right? So it's open-ended, and then people will tell you whatever's important to them. And so that's what we're trying to discover is like what's important to them in this situation. Okay. And so, all right, so you had your first thought, so it's about, well, what did you do then? Where did you look for information, or what else did you consider? Did you consider doing yoga or going to the gym, or did you consider a personal trainer or a different Pilates studio? Like what options did you look at? Okay. And then, what problem are they trying to solve by coming to Pilates, right? So we say, people want to, become more body aware. It's like, but why? Are they trying to solve the fact that they've got shoulder pain, or are they, worried about the fact that they've got a birthday with a 0 coming up and they want to remain ageless, or, is there some other, more important reason as well? So, tell me about why it's important to you to make, to do Pilates. Why is that important to you? Then their desired end state, So this is for somebody who, say if we're talking to one of your best clients, someone who's a regular, you're like, okay, well, what do you love about Pilates? What's awesome? How has Pilates changed your life? What difference has Pilates made for you? What's better about your life now than when you weren't doing Pilates? Or for somebody who's not yet a client, someone who inquired but never kind of stuck with it. It's like, okay, well, when you imagine your life doing Pilates regularly, like what does that look like? What's different for you? What's better about that? Why is that important? And then obstacles. So is there anything about starting Pilates that makes you nervous? What's the biggest obstacle to you starting or continuing Pilates? Tell me more about that. Because people will often say like, oh, time or money or whatever. It's like, okay, but tell me specifically tell me more about that. I go, oh, well, my daughter's ballet class is on a Wednesday and that conflicts with the thing. And so then you see there's this tension between the family responsibility and then looking after self, which is a deeper, thing underlying it. And what's held you back up until now? Tell me more about that. And then ask them if they've got any questions for you. While we're on the phone, is there anything you'd like to ask me? Everything's on the table. Is there anything you're curious about? And is there anything else you'd like to share with me? Just again, open-ended questions. And then what I did, because I didn't have, when I was doing all these interviews, I didn't have any mechanism for recording the call. I just literally typed it out as they were talking. And I'm a fast typer, but not a very accurate typer. So I had to go through afterwards and try and decipher what I'd typed. And in most cases, I, got it, I think, fairly right. But, there are lots of apps that you can use to record your phone calls and stuff, but you just have to make sure you let the person know and ask their permission to record it. And it's really important that if you're typing, that you type it out verbatim. So, verbatim just means like literally in their exact words, right? So if they use bad grammar or whatever, don't correct it. Just, type out exactly the words that they use. And then, what we found, and what you'll find if you do this process is, the first couple of people, the first 5 people, you'll be like, wow, this is an amazing story, right? What's brought you here? And then by the time you get to the 8th or 10th person, you'll be like, hold on, I think I know what you're just about to tell me here, right? Because they'll start telling you something and you'll be like, I've heard this story 8 times before already, right? And you'll start to notice patterns, okay? And you'll start to notice differences in the patterns between the people who are your raving fans and the people who are not your raving fans, right? People who didn't come back after their 3rd trial class, okay? And it's not necessarily going to be the case that there's something you need to do better or different to bring those people back. It might be that's like they just recognize they're not a good fit for your service, right? Or it might be that you're unknowingly doing something that is pushing those particular people away, right? Unintentionally, which you could easily change. And what you get, when you end up with 20 of these, right, of some of your clients who never became clients, some of your raving fans, some of your people who came for a while and then dropped out, whatever, you get like this, just a gold mine of amazing stories from people that tell of people's like what's really important to these people about doing Pilates and why they come to you for it, or why they didn't come to you, and that'll give you a sense of how they see you, right? So what do they see as different about you? And they'll tell you, right? Why did you come here? Why did you choose Pilates with me? What else did you consider? Why didn't you go with those ones? What pushed you towards, pulled you towards working with me, right? And they'll tell you, and you might be super surprised by what they tell you, right? You might be like, something that you maybe consider totally inconsequential, right? That you like wearing red or something. They might be like, oh, I just love the way you always wear red because my mum used to wear red or whatever. Like there might be some really random thing that you just think like, whoa, I can't believe that's the secret sauce that makes me so awesome for this person. Or it might be that, like you're always cheerful in the mornings or you're not cheerful in the mornings. I like the way when I come in the mornings, you don't chirp at me all the time, right? You just let me suffer in silence through my class, okay? I don't like these morning cheerful people, right? It's stuff comes up that you might find is like quite surprising about what, people love about what you do. And then in their words, well, those are the things that you differentiate yourself, right? So if it's like, okay, everyone says I love the fact that you're not a chirpy morning person and you don't always, tell funny jokes and get me to interact and stuff in the morning when I'm grumpy and haven't had my coffee yet. Okay. Well, that you put that on your website or you put that in, on all your marketing. You say, hey, this is what's different about here. Like we're not going to get you to interact when you haven't had your coffee yet. Right? I mean, that's kind of a banal example, right? But for example, for us, a massive theme that came out, because we're not in the Pilates studio business, we're in the business of teaching people to be Pilates instructors, okay? And so the people that, we talk to, a massive theme was I've loved Pilates for ages and I've been wanting to become an instructor for ages, right? And I'm in a situation where I'm not fulfilled by my job or my home life anymore. I've either been a stay-at-home parent or I'm, been working or studying or whatever, and I've come to a point where I'm not satisfied with that anymore. Maybe I was satisfied with it, but I'm no longer. And I've been wanting to make this change to a lifestyle that's more healthy for me, more personally rewarding, more meaningful, where I can make a difference, but I've got these doubts. I wonder, am I too old, right? What if I'm not flexible enough? What if I can't find work? What if I'm not fit enough? What if I'm not perfect at all the moves? What if I'm not good when I get up in front of a group and can't, I don't know what to say, right? So people have all of these doubts and that, but they love Pilates. I mean, you love Pilates, right? They is you, right? In this case, right? Because a lot of you are our clients. Have been our clients. So, and so what we learned by listening to those interviews and then collating them all was that was what distinguished our clients. And you know what, the people who never became students for us, they were the people who didn't mind Pilates, right? They were like, oh yeah, my friend does Pilates and she loves it. So I thought maybe I should be a Pilates instructor, or I'm a fitness instructor and I've never tried Pilates, but I thought, why not add another string to my bow? Like they were the people who didn't become our clients, right? So to them, we were like, yeah, take it or leave it. But for the people who loved Pilates, they love it. And it's like so many people, and I bet most of you can identify with this, said to me like, the only time in the week when I'm truly happy and at peace is when I'm doing Pilates. Right? Or I've tried so many forms of exercise and never enjoyed it until I found Pilates, right? That I can't tell you how many people said that to me. And so what you'll find is your clients will have common themes as well, right? And so now if you go on our website, guess what it says? Hey, if you love Pilates, right? And the only time in the week when you're happy is when you're lying on that reformer bed, okay, and you're kind of getting sick of your current career and it's not fulfilling you anymore, and you've really been wanting to make this change for a couple of years now, but you've got these worries, you've got these concerns, right? Am I too old? Am I not flexible enough? Etc. Right. Well, when the right people read that, they're like, that's me. These people get me. Right? And that makes us differentiated. Right? So if you can get that same information out of your clients and find out, okay, tell me about when you first started thinking about doing Pilates. What triggered that? You know, how long have you been thinking about it? What's held you back until now? You know, what did they see as the obstacles to them doing it? Or what do you love about it? What keeps you coming back every time? You know, surely you have days when you wake up and you're feeling cranky because the kids haven't slept all night or whatever, but you still show up. So what gets you out of bed to come here in the mornings? Okay, when you don't feel like it. And they'll tell you. Okay, and those are the things. Right? That's your point of differentiation. Does that make sense? What questions have you got, or what thoughts have you got on that? I didn't make this process up, by the way. I learned it from someone else.
I thought you did. I thought it was cool.
Do you think you could do this with some clients or prospects, people at your studio? You probably need about a half hour for each conversation. And so, if you're doing a few a week, it's like a couple of hours a week. And then 6 weeks later, bam, you've talked to like 20 people. And 20 people's enough for you to really start seeing the patterns. Because it might be something about you that your clients love that you don't even think of. You think it's inconsequential, but to them it's not inconsequential. What other thoughts have you got? Is there anything else? Is there anything that would, that you perceive as an obstacle to you doing this? Carly says, I think I need more clients first. Just started teaching private lessons from home. Well, I would say talk to the people that you're working with, Carly, and just say, hey, look, you're a great client. We've only had 3 sessions, but I already know I like you as a client. So, can I buy you coffee one time after the session, and pick your brain a little bit? And I'd be shocked if those people said no. My experience is people are delighted when you want to, you're not trying to sell them anything. You just want to understand their story. Everyone wants to be understood.
Rap.
Anyhow.
I teach in a lot of different studios and they all have different demographics. And a common thing that I've found is people don't really care who the instructor is. They just care what the time slot works for their routine. And I think when you offer them a lot of different time slots, that sets you as a differentiating point as well. Like a studio with a big, huge timetable where you can, possibly have more options to choose. This is just my opinion because every time I talk to someone, I've just seen the time is a big factor for them, like what time slot works best for them.
100%. I think another one is probably parking. Like if your studio's on a main highway with a clear way at a certain time of day, that's going to turn a lot of people off. Where do you park? Or public transport? Yeah. Or changing rooms for some people might be a big thing. Bridget, so you're concerned about soliciting people and them saying no.
Probably more the people that inquired and didn't come. It's like, well, can I try and figure out which ones might want to have a conversation with me? But given a lot of the people I know, then they're probably not going to knock me back.
Yeah, well, my experience with this is no one's ever said no. A lot of people have just not responded.
Yeah.
And that's the general situation. So I basically texted all of these people and just introduced myself, said, hey, Bridget, Raph here from Breathe, you inquired with us 3 months ago or whatever. I'm not trying to sell you anything here, but I'd really like to have a phone chat if you'd be open to sharing, because I'd like to understand why you chose not to go with us. And if you frame it that way, you definitely won't get as good a response rate amongst people who didn't go with you as you will from your raving fans, obviously. But I'd be shocked if you get any rejections. I mean, unless you screamed at someone and kicked them out of class one time or something, in which case I would say don't approach that person. But if it was just people, like mostly people would have probably come and then, just life got the better of them, right, was the reason they didn't come back. Right, so 99% of them bear no ill will. It's just like they didn't get it together enough to keep going, right? So they're not thinking, oh, bloody Bridget, when will she ever leave me alone? They're at home thinking, gee, I'm feeling a bit lazy. I wish I could motivate myself to get back to Pilates or whatever. So and the other thing is sometimes when you do that, you might reactivate some of them, right? So you might text and go, hey, I haven't seen you in class for ages now, so I'm assuming you kind of have dropped out. And I'd really love to understand, why. I'm not trying to sell you another 10-pack here. I'm just trying to understand, what led to that decision for you. And you might be surprised by, you get a lot of people going, oh, yeah, I've been thinking about you a lot and I really wanted to come back to class. And then the next week they'll show up again. So you might get more clients out of it.
I like it. It's a nicer approach than, hey, just wondering how you're going. Did you want to come again?
Yeah. And if you start with the intention of genuinely just being curious about why, what's going on for you, right? And I have no agenda here. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Like there will be no point on the call where anything will be for sale, right? And this is a one-time deal. I'm never going to call you back and go, oh, we had this chat last week. Now do you want to buy a 10 pass? It's just like I would want to understand what's going on for you. That's all, right? And if you genuinely have that attitude and you explain that to the person, it's like, I mean, there might be people that are like, yeah, I don't really have time. My life's too busy, whatever. And they just won't get back to you, right? But I mean, I've had like over 100 of these conversations. I've never had anybody be anything but delighted to hear from me or ignore it. 80% of them were like, oh, that's awesome. I'd love to talk to you. And 20% of them were like, radio silence. But that's pretty easy to bear, isn't it? Radio silence. Yeah, Marie said some people stay for a lifetime, others just stay for a while and move on. And so what's the difference between those people, right? Is it age? Is it people who are homeowners stay longer because they're more permanent in the location? Is it people of a certain, demographic, or is it more about beliefs, or people who are injured stay longer, or is it some other thing that is the kind of the differentiating factor between those people? Actually, one thing I read in an URSA review a couple of years back was that, and this was about fitness centres, but I'm sure it applies to Pilates as well, is that clients over 35 on average stay like triple as long as clients under 35 at a fitness facility. So older clients tend to be, more stable. They don't move around as much. They, whatever. So it's like once they become clients, they're more likely to stick with it.
I guess rather people would stay and come back if they see the benefits of whatever exercise they're doing. So if somebody comes in with low back pain and they come 2 or 3 times a week and they find that it has benefited them, then they're more inclined to come back. That's what I think anyway. And the other thing is that I think that maybe a lot of younger people would be looking more for that gym type, not the slow sort of. They would be more looking for the creative, more, I suppose, action-filled type of Pilates session, and that would probably attract a lot of the younger people. Whereas the older generation, I think, would be more concerned about becoming more, getting more movement and getting, feeling better within themselves as such.
Yeah, agreed. But you might find even within that, like even within each of those demographics, there might be sort of subgroups of people who will be, more or less attracted to certain teachers or certain studios or certain class types. So I think it's really, we went in with a lot of assumptions into this process when we did it about, we know who our students are and whatever, but we've got quite a few surprises. There are quite a few things that surprised me about actually what our true student journey is. So I think, I suspect you're probably correct on that, but I'd also suspect that you'll probably be surprised by some of the things that your clients would tell you. Bridget says, I'd love to find out more about the people who used my online Pilates in lockdown, why they left when we came out of lockdown, as well as some of the obvious reasons. Yeah, what a great project is to reach out to those people and set up a Zoom call or a phone chat with them. Often, if you ask, the great thing about these questions is often people don't really know. I mean, all of us, we don't really know our motivations for doing things a lot of the time. We just kind of get an urge to do one thing or to stop doing it, or we lose motivation, or we, whatever. And often we don't really know why, and so if we just ask someone, why did you stop? Well, often they'll give you an answer, but often it might not be the true answer because they don't know the true answer. Whereas if you ask them that, like, what was going on for you? Okay, so tell me about when COVID happened, what happened, et cetera. Well, do you still think about coming back? And what stops you from coming back? What do you see as an obstacle in the way there? Or, what else are you doing instead? And you might, just asking open-ended questions, often stuff will come out that you'll think like, you weren't telling me what you thought the reason was there, but it seems to me that that's the reason. So I'm going to share this Word document under the video in the Facebook group. And I got this from a book called The Changemakers or Changemaker by John Berardi, which I highly recommend. It's a fantastic book about succeeding as a fitness trainer. And it's nothing to do with fitness training. Like, it doesn't tell you how to do any exercises or put together a program or any of that. It's about how to coach and motivate your clients, how to find the right clients, how to build processes and systems if you have a business, how to communicate, all of those things that are not to do with the actual training part, about how to succeed both in terms of having happy and fulfilled client relationships and also succeed financially and not burn yourself out in the process. So I highly recommend it. That's where I got this process from, and this has just been absolutely gold for our for our business, for Breathe Education, because it's really helped us understand who our clients are and who our clients aren't, and what is different about us that is important to our clients. Anything else you'd like to add? Well, thanks so much for tuning in. If questions occur to you after, or if you are watching or listening to this afterwards and you want to add some contribution or question, just pop it in a chat underneath the video in Facebook, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Enjoy the rest of your day.